Okay, well, in the news, Egyptians are going to the polls for the start of a historic series of elections, but the Muslim Brotherhood and its allies will likely win. And that may be bad news for the Christians who live in Egypt.
Gary Lane has this look at the first election since the downfall of Hosni Mubarak and why Islamist groups may come out ahead.
The protesters who continue to gather in Cairo and other Egyptian cities want civilian control of the country and a shorter timeline for next year's presidential election. Earlier this month, police clashed with the demonstrators, many of them Islamists, and they tried to clear them from Tahrir Square. Egyptians say they want more control over their daily lives. This man says he wants Egypt to move on, whether it's run by Islamist Sharia law or by a civilian party. Egyptians say little has changed for them since the revolution that ousted President Hosni Mubarak last winter. The economy has gotten worse, and many people are struggling just to pay their bills. The Hudson Institute's Samuel Tadros places the blame on Egypt's de facto leader, Mohammed Tantawi, and the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces.
In a sense, there was never a Mubarak regime. It is the same military dictatorship that has been ruling Egypt since 1952 with its control of the Egyptian economy. These guys are basically clueless at how to run the country on a daily basis.
Nor do they really want to run it. Tadros says the army leadership wants to rule the country but not govern it. Day-to-day matters, bread and butter issues, will be left to whichever party gains the most seats in the parliamentary elections. So far, because secular parties are disorganized and weak, it looks like the better organized, stronger Muslim Brotherhood and its Freedom and Justice Party may win a plurality of votes. Egyptian electoral districts are drawn to favor the countryside, where people are poor and less educated, and that's where the Muslim Brotherhood has its greatest influence. Some Egyptians say the Brotherhood and other Islamists have tried to gain votes by providing food aid to the poor in these areas just days before the election. And some secularist candidates say there's been corruption in the election process. They've charged that election officials have offered to provide them with fraudulent election ballots in exchange for money. Several pre-election polls suggest the Brotherhood's Freedom and Justice Party will likely receive at least 35% of the vote. Each of the secular parties are polling between 2 and 5%. And that may not bode well for Egypt's Christians. They're about 10% of the population, and many fear attacks against them may increase if the Brotherhood and its allies control the government.
Egypt might turn out to be democratic, who knows, but might. It might turn out to be more economically prosperous, but it definitely will not turn out to be more hospitable to its Christians.
So, facing increased persecution and no say in their future, another exodus from the land of the pharaohs may occur. Only this time it may be the Christians, not the Hebrews, fleeing Egypt, a country that has been home to Christianity for nearly 2,000 years. Gary Lane, CBN News.
You got to watch it, ladies and gentlemen, and we're not being bigoted to say that the Muslim Brotherhood has announced its goals. They want to reestablish the caliphate. They want to bring in Sharia law. That's what they say, and they're winning. So, you know, you say, well, let's have democratic elections. Well, democratic elections in a Muslim state means that those people win and take control, just like Hamas did on the West Bank. Well, Lee Webb has the rest of our top stories from the CBN Newsroom. Lee?
Pat, Germany and France are now working on a plan to prevent the European debt crisis from getting worse. The new strategy would impose more budget disciplines for Eurozone countries, forcing them to shrink the debts that started the crisis. Reaching an agreement, though, among the 17 Eurozone nations may prove to be difficult, but the international financial markets rallied strongly on news of the plan. The holiday shopping season is off to a great start. Consumers spent record amounts in stores this Black Friday weekend. Online sales are up as well, and retailers are hoping those numbers will continue to rise today during Cyber Monday. Charlene Israel has that story.
More Americans shopped for Black Friday bargains this year than ever before. A record 226 million people shopped online or in stores during the four-day holiday weekend. That's 144 million more than a year ago, and they spent more too. The average holiday shopper spent about $398, up from $365 last year.
Like we had a little bit more room to buy more gifts this season.
It seems efforts made by retailers to lure shoppers in paid off. Some major chains like Macy's, Target, and Best Buy started the shopping season early. They opened their doors at midnight on Thursday instead of on Friday like their competition. But it remains to be seen if retailers can continue to hold shoppers' attention. The holiday season can account for 25 to 40% of a store's annual revenue.
As the consumer spends and the momentum coming out of holiday very well will likely and usually does create growth the following year.
If they do, it's great news for the economy, but if they don't, well, this was a one-hit wonder.
Increased spending will continue at least through today. Cyber Monday is the busiest online retail day of the year.
It's more convenient. You know, you don't have to deal with traffic, with lines. You don't have to worry about all the crowds.
More than 123 million people say they plan to shop from their home or office today. Charlene Israel, CBN News.
And if you are planning to take advantage of online sales, experts recommend checking your favorite store's Facebook or Twitter accounts for special deals. Pat?
Well, the news out of France and Germany about the euro has spurred not only shopping for gifts, but it's spurred the stock market futures, which are up somehow 230 or 40 points on the Dow, and silver is up. The price of oil futures hitting almost $100 a barrel, and apparently there's a euphoria on account of what looks like an aversion of the crisis in Europe. It remains to be seen whether that crisis has been averted.
That's what I was going to say. Do you think it's very temporary?
Probably. There's too much debt out there, and but the market has got so much money, and the people want so badly to invest and to make some money, and there's no chance to do it, and so they'll jump in right now. And of course, the news out of this Black Friday was tremendous. I mean, the biggest probably on record, a huge amount of buying. Where do people get all that money?
Well, you hope it's not credit.
Well, it is a lot of it. Well, we'll go back to Lee Webb as we continue our news. Lee?
Turning overseas, an Islamist party has won the parliamentary elections in Morocco. It's one of the latest victories by Islamists in the Middle East. The party took almost twice as many seats as the second-place finisher. Islamist parties have been the biggest winners since the new freedoms brought about by the so-called Arab Spring. The Arab League has overwhelmingly approved sanctions against the government of Syrian President Bashar Assad. The League is trying to pressure the regime to end its deadly suppression of an 8-month-old uprising against Assad. Syria's economic minister called the new sanctions, quote, a dangerous precedent. He says it will harm ordinary people more than the government. It is the first time, though, in 66 years that the League has punished one of its members. Pat?
That's big news, ladies and gentlemen. You see, the Assad regime is comprised of the Alawite sect. It's a small sliver of Islam. The majority of the people would be Sunni Muslims. And the Alawites were, in some instance, in partnership with the Ba'ath Party in Iraq. But they have held on by a brutal dictatorship. Hafez al-Assad, is the father of the current president, was a brutal dictator. And now the people want something different. Now, they'll maybe wind up with another Islamic deal, which won't be particularly good for Christians, but nevertheless, I think the Assads are going to have to go, and the fact that the Arab League has come out against them this strongly is a big deal. I mean, they haven't had sanctions like this in, what was it, 66 years or so. So it is a major thrust. But Damascus was home for about 10 terrorist groups. They just congregated there in Damascus, and they had a home. And of course, the Syrians were tied in closely with the Iranian regime. So if they go down, it'll be an important thing, and it looks like they will. Lee?
Pakistan has kicked the U.S. off of an air base used to service CIA drones. It's Pakistan's latest response to a NATO assault that killed at least 24 Pakistani soldiers. Unnamed Afghan officials say that a joint Afghan-NATO force on the Afghan side of the border received incoming fire from the direction of Pakistani posts, and they called in airstrikes.
The commander of ISAF has made this his very clearly highest priority, and he has personally ordered a very detailed investigation into the case.
The relationship now, I believe, has hit a new low. It appears now to be as close as we've seen to a real break in relations.
Pakistan also closed 2 border crossings that the U.S. military uses to resupply troops in Afghanistan. Relations between the 2 countries were strained back in May after the killing of Osama bin Laden on Pakistani soil. A federal court will now hear the case of a 10 Commandments display in a Southwest Virginia high school. A student and the student's parents sued the Giles County School Board. They claim the display violates the First Amendment rights because it endorses a particular religion. The Liberty Council represents the school board. It claims the display is not meant to promote Christianity. It simply pays tribute to influential historical documents. Pat?
You know, I think it's time we start saying this country was founded on Judeo-Christian principles. I read over the holiday a book on George Washington. George Washington said, it's a famous statement, the reason and experience forbid us to expect public morality in the absence of religious principle. He was strongly in favor of this. You look at the Declaration of Independence, there's an appeal to nature's God, nature's God, and men are endowed by their Creator. How can we get away from the fact that we're a Judeo-Christian country? And for some little atheist in Giles County to say, well, the 10 Commandments violates his beliefs, if he doesn't like it, he doesn't have to read it. He can walk right by it and be happy. One guy, one set of parents, and this thing has been up for at least 10 years, and we have been under these principles. But you look at every president all along the way, they swear an oath of allegiance with their hand on the Bible, you know, and they say an oath, so help me God. I will tell the truth, so help me God. Well, we are a religious people. Why don't we stop acting like we're not? And saying, well, this has a secular purpose to it. Well, it's got a religious purpose to it, which undergirds our secular state. We have freedoms because we believe in God, and God is the author of our freedoms.
The eviction deadline for Occupy Los Angeles protesters has come and gone, but some of the demonstrators are vowing to stand their ground. City officials cite public health and safety concerns. They had announced that all demonstrators must leave the City Hall lawn by 12:01 a.m. this morning. Hundreds rallied at City Hall Park in anticipation of that deadline. Local police believe they will have to make arrests. New DNA technology will soon allow restaurants to make sure they serve the type of seafood their customers order. The Food and Drug Administration approved a DNA barcoding system that will prevent the mislabeling of seafood. Mislabeling usually involves cheaper types of fish being sold as more expensive varieties. The new system will be able to determine the type of fish being sold. Countries around the world are considering adopting similar DNA barcoding methods. And you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.